From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Apologize there, my voice. Monday morning, obviously, long. I was off the grid from Friday to pretty much Sunday morning, and I enjoyed every second of it. It was absolutely unbelievable. I swear, put your phones away, drop everything for a little bit, disconnect. It'll do you wonders. All right, packed show for all of y'all today. Show broken down into two segments. Our first segment, we're really going to talk about some of the geopolitical aspects that are impacting cybersecurity, including some of the latest nation state attacks, and then we'll move into some of the latest data breaches and ransomware vulnerabilities. So let's get the show going. Join me for a coffee cup cheers. I've got my double espresso to power me through this morning's episode. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. All right, we'll kick off with OpenAI publishing this week that the company has disrupted more than 20 cyber and covert influence operations since the beginning of the year, including some activities of Iranian and Chinese state-sponsored attackers. Now, before I get into details here, I just want to point one thing out, and I just want to kind of say this in a way that can resonate. Most attackers are lazy. Not saying all, most. And this is the proof. The report highlights activities of 3 different threat groups that have abused ChatGPT to conduct cyber attacks. One of them is Cyber Avengers, which is linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Let me fix that, please. And it's made headlines this year for its attacks on the water sector, including the water utility in Ireland that left people without water for 2 days, the additional water utility in Pennsylvania, and other water facilities across the U.S. that have not yet been announced. The attacks didn't involve any sort of sophisticated attack. They just went after PLCs that are internet connected that you can actually find, and they built the exploits using ChatGPT. In addition to that, the U.S. government's made public the identities of several of the members of the Cyber Avengers, which, we all know how, we're all for that. So there's OpenAI as well summarized activities of a China-linked threat actor known as Sweet Spectre, which not only used ChatGPT for reconnaissance and vulnerability research, as well as malware development and social engineering, but also attempted to send emails delivering malware to OpenAI employees. Don't blame them for the lack of creativity, folks. Do not blame them there. Storm 0817, which is another group, attempted to use the AI service for information that could be used for the development of a piece of malware designed to steal information from Android devices as well. The threat actor also leveraged a chatbot for assistance in creating an Instagram scraper and to translate LinkedIn profiles into Persian, which obviously tells you and gives you the attribution you need. Only one country in the world speaks Persian, that's Iran. So there's that there. That's not all about Iran. APT-34, aka also known as Oil Rig, has escalated its activities with new campaigns targeting government and critical infrastructure entities in the UAE and additional Gulf regions. This is on the heels of the Iranian foreign minister kind of making a trip ahead of the Israeli response, which as of this morning, literally minutes before the show, I saw a news break, not to be confirmed, but Israel has approved their retaliation plan for the ballistic missile strike from Iran towards Israel. So now that the plans have been approved, one can imagine that the response is only maybe a week or two away from actually taking place. This specific one, according to Trend Micro researcher, deploys a novel backdoor. It targets Microsoft Exchange servers to steal credentials. It's exploiting CVE 2024-30088 to elevate their privileges on some of these compromised devices. The attacks begin with the exploitation of a web server to upload a web shell. It gives the attackers the ability to execute remote code and various PowerShell commands. And again, this goes to identification. And identifying these types of attacks goes into really honing in on your security operations. When are we deploying PowerShell commands? How likely is it? What's the IP address that's coming from? Who's the user doing it? Would that user be a user that would deploy PowerShell? Like all of those matter. The training of your security operations to understand the business operations helps it detect this type of activity much, much faster. Again, let me repeat that. Training your security operations to business operations helps your security operation team detect threats much, much faster. And you have to do that. That's got to be part of the kind of muscle memory you instill in security operations team, business operations, security operations, business operations. They go hand in hand. So Microsoft is acknowledging that the proof of concept exploit has yet marked the flaws actively exploited on its security portal. However, we now know that Oil Rig is using it. It's also registering a password filter DLL to intercept plain text credentials during password change events, and then download and installs remote monitoring and management tool ngrok used for stealthy communication through secure tunnels. Again, what you're seeing is the ability to obfuscate, go in, create an event, and then leverage that event for an attack. And again, business operations to security operations. I'm going to repeat that. That's a theme with Iran. That's a theme with China. And by the way, it's one of our areas of opportunities in cybersecurity significantly. The key objective of the stage is to capture stolen password. They want to transmit them to attackers as email attachments. And obviously, everything I'm reading, everything you're seeing on the screen, if you're watching us live, is available in the show notes. So you can actually go and read this and kind of do a deeper dive if you'd like to, because I'm only kind of giving you the big bullets here. And then you can find it on our Substack at jamesazar.substack.com as well there. So there's that. Now, they're primarily targeting countries, Iran being Shia, and the GCC nations being Sunni. They're targeting those. They're trying to leverage some sort of cyber capabilities in the event those countries decide to turn on Iran, which is, something they're likely going to do because Sunnis and Shiites just do not get along. We move to China and Salt Typhoon, and U.S. officials are scrambling to understand just the impact of the devastating counterintelligence failure here. Federal authorities and cybersecurity investigators are probing the breaches both at Verizon Communications, AT&T, and Lumen Technologies. That's just to name a few. Those are the ones that have been publicized and rumored to be impacted. There's more. I've been told by someone close to this investigation, there's about a dozen more companies that have been impacted by this. A dozen more. They're just not releasing it because they don't want to hinder the investigation. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to hinder their investigation either at this time. But I will say it's jaw-dropping. All right. So Congress and Senate, obviously, a month before the election, they're on break. They're all campaigning. They're all, trying to grift more taxpayer money. But while they're doing that, they're not really trying to investigate this, which requires congressional and Senate to get involved here, right? And this is significant, by the way. So it's all platitudes of the stuff they say, and there's a whole bunch of quotes here. This is by the Wall Street Journal. So they reached out to the senators and they all responded, because this isn't some cybersecurity publication. This is the Wall Street Journal, and they all answer the Wall Street Journal, right? And they all want the quote in there so they can put it on their X page or wherever and say, hey, look, I deeply care. I'm so concerned. The dysfunction in DC is the reason why our adversaries are able to do what they do. The lack of cohesiveness around cybersecurity in the federal government, the battles that go on behind the scenes around funding, the fact that TSA has any sort of cybersecurity responsibility just shows you the amount of dysfunctions that exist within the federal government. So the fact that the Chinese were able to do this is absolutely not surprising, although deeply concerning, because it's the wiretap system. And the big concern here, by the way, by several elected officials is, did the Chinese figure out, did they discover the wiretaps that existed against Chinese targets in the US? Chances are that's a yes. And that's hindered those investigations. That's likely stopped those activities. So it may have achieved the desired result per se, because now they've got to change modus operandi. Those people are now compromised, right? They've had to leave, and that entire operation is gone. So it's had the desired result, but was this the path? And then what else was compromised beyond just, let's say, potential Chinese espionage targets, that China may have sold that information to its allies, or may have given them a favor saying, hey, your guy in the US, he's under federal wiretaps. It's any day now. Get him out. The damage here is significant. When people don't tell you life don't depend on cyber, it does. All right, we got to speed through because I am really taking my time on this one, and I want to be mindful of your time this Monday morning. So, CISO's warning: the threat actors have been observed abusing unencrypted persistent F5 big IP cookies to identify and target other internal devices on the network. They're using a local traffic manager within big IP in order to enumerate other non-internet facing devices on the network. That's how they're essentially getting a network map. So you want to make sure you get this addressed. This starts in version 11.5.0 and onward, where administrators were given a new required option to enforce encryption on all cookies. You want to do that ASAP. Cyber insurers are saying that ransomware attacks drove a spike in claim sizes, and while there were fewer claims in the first half of 2024 than the same period of a year earlier, the size of those claims did increase by 14% to an average loss of $122,000. The average loss for ransomware claims was $353,000, according to Coalition. That's a 68% spike. The report isn't all bad. Ransomware claims among businesses with between 25 to 100 million in revenue steadily declined over the past 12 months. And again, it's likely because they're not paying, and it's likely because they didn't have anything of value. So all of that there is gone. Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. Find everything there. Let's move to some data breaches here. Fidelity Investments is notifying tens of thousands of individuals that their PII was compromised as a result of the unauthorized activity that occurred back in August. We reported this on the show back on August 18th, I believe, or the 20th, that this was that they had unauthorized access and that they were waiting. Now, the Maine Attorney General was notified that 77,000 individuals were impacted by the breach. That's a small subset of their entire customer base. Everyone was given 24 months of free credited monitoring and identity restoration services. This is their second data breach, so you can imagine that they'll pay a $20 million fine and just be told, hey, don't do this again. Game Freak, the renowned developer behind the Pokemon franchise, suffered a cyber attack that led to the unauthorized leaking of internal information. The attack was acknowledged by the company yesterday, revealed a trove of sensitive data, including source code, unreleased game details, and personal information of employees. It appears to have occurred back in August of this year when a third party gained access to the company's server. Game Freak confirmed the breach resulted in the leak of personal data belonging to 2,600 individuals, encompassing both current and former employees. The leaked information primarily includes a name and company email addresses, so nothing crazy there. In response to the incident, Game Freak issued an apology to all affected parties, stating they sincerely apologize. The scope of the attack here is kind of given a bit more information. This includes source code for multiple Pokemon titles and development details for specific future projects. Notably, the codename for the anticipated 10th generation of Pokemon, internally referred to as Gaia, has resurfaced, along with information suggesting that the next Pokemon game is being tested for the upcoming Switch successor. So, some damage there for the company. American Water Works is saying that they're in the process of securely reconnecting its systems following their October 3rd cyber attack. This is after a regulatory filing on Thursday. The largest regulated water utility says there's no evidence the incident impacted its water or wastewater facilities. It was purely their IT systems and not their OT systems or their functioning OT systems there. So now they're coming back as well. Moody's said they viewed the incident as a credit negative, citing the disruption of service across the company's 14-state operational footprint. We'll see how they talk about this on a material breach. But when the credit rating agencies are kind of letting you know, hey, we view this negatively, you know everything you need to know. Again, ransomware gangs are now exploiting a critical vulnerability that lets attackers gain remote code execution on vulnerable Veeam backup and replication servers. CodeWhite security researcher Florian Hauser found that the security flaw CVE 2024-40711 is caused by the deserialization of untrusted data weakness that unauthenticated threat actors can exploit in low complexity attack. Veeam disclosed the vulnerability, released security updates back on September 4th, while Watchtower Labs published a technical analysis on the 9th of September. And then they've delayed publishing a proof of concept exploit code until the 15th to give admins enough time to secure their server. The delay was prompted by businesses using Veeam VBR software as a data protection and disaster recovery solution for backing up, restoring, and replicating virtual, physical, and cloud machines. This makes it an extremely popular target. Not the first Veeam Flaw target in ransomware attacks that have had this happen before. And if you're a Juniper Network customer, you may want to pay attention to over a dozen patches released for a dozen vulnerabilities in the Jonas OS and Jonas OS Evolved network operating systems, including multiple flaws in several third-party software components. According to Juniper, unauthenticated attackers can send malformed BGP packets or updates, specific HTTPS connection requests, crafted TCP traffic, and MPLS packets to trigger these bugs and cause a denial of service conditions. So a whole bunch of updates there that you can see in our show notes and also on our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, follow, like, share, comment. Appreciate your support. Have a great, great week. And most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.